Make sure it's there. I'll just put that there. Sweet. I think it's working there. Should be good. You just muted it here. Awesome. We'll see how many people end up joining. This is the first one in, I looked, it was 9 months or something like that since the last collector live stream. Let me actually put this down to 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not that long after the one that I did.
I think you're a few episodes before that. Just got so busy with moving into the house and all the different projects, but it's glad to finally bring back the series because I always enjoy seeing all the different collections out there. And I know when we did our series together, we only saw like a fraction of your music cards, and then we didn't even cover your Disney. So when you reached out back in, was it November or December? I'm like, let's definitely do this again in 2024. And I'll make myself be active on this and do it every 2 weeks. I think it was a kind of overkill doing it every week. It just felt like a grind, but every 2 weeks have a little bit of a refresher and it works out because I truly love enjoying seeing all the different collections out there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back. And I really enjoy talking with you about this non-sport stuff and learning from you. And I appreciate the opportunity to show off some stuff and have a discussion about some of these things that we both love. And just to frame sort of what I collect and what I'm going to show and not going to show. I actually collect pretty broadly within non-sport. I collect vintage Star Wars. I collect vintage Indiana Jones and music and film stars and TV stars and Disney and certain Apollo 11 stuff and various things like that. Some historical figures, not nearly to the extent you do, but I have a pretty maybe unfocused collection is the way that maybe a way to describe it, but it's all focused around just things that either have nostalgic value to me or really, really globally iconic people or people that have otherwise been very iconic at some point in my lifetime. So that can be people who were famous before I was born, if they were still very culturally relevant, once I was born and once I was a kid or an adolescent, or it could be people who, have reached stardom in some way. Since I've been alive. With the Disney stuff, we'll see some Walt Disney stuff. That's a focus of my Disney collection is Walt as himself. And, obviously he was dead. I was born in 1971. He died in 1966. But, when I was growing up, they would still show, like Wonderful World of Disney or whatever on Sunday nights. And Walt would, introduce everything. And I don't even know if I knew till I was 10 or 12 years old that he wasn't alive. So he had an effect on me, even though he was dead several years before I was born. So that's how I loop him into my collection. But tonight I'm just going to focus on showing some music stuff that I've gotten since the last time I was on here. I'm not going to duplicate anything that I showed the last time. And then after the music discussion, we'll move into the Disney stuff. And, if different groups of people want to see one and not the other, that's an easy way for them to kind of watch the part that's most relevant for them.
Yeah. And like I said, or like you said, you were on here last time. So if anyone wants to watch that video, just go into the live tab on the YouTube channel. And we talked probably about an hour and a half, just exclusively music cards. And I will say one thing about Disney. I don't think any kid realized that Walt Disney was dead until like they turned in their early teens and like, oh, okay. I don't know. The Disney brand does such a good job, like as a kid, not realizing all the other factors out there. But I'm excited to see some of your music cards because that's one of my most passionate areas. And we go back and forth, always showing earlier cards of different bands or individuals talking about rare sets or new things that we discover. And I think music collectors in general are super passionate and showcase a lot of the different sets that people have no idea about. I always feel like every 2 or 3 months, there's a card that one of us picks up or one of our mutual friends picks up and goes, did you know this existed? And you're like, no, I need to find it now. But I think with non-sports in general, not just exclusively music, but I think that's the beauty of that subject matter is it's not documented well. It's not like baseball where even the rare niche sets, like they do get uncovered every once in a while, but 99.99% of both baseball sets already documented. You're not going to see new discoveries every year. When there is a new discovery, it's all over hobby media. Oh, this new set or this new card got discovered. But like there's so much discovery with non-sports and stuff that people have no understand that's out there. It's like every week there's something new.
Right. And you can either find that exhilarating, you can find that terribly frustrating, or you can find it both at
I think
different
it's
moments
both.
of time. It is both.
Because you chase a card forever and then you go, oh, there's something earlier. All right, time to go back to it.
Yeah, well, we talked about the whole, rookie thing in non-sport the last time, and I'm an opponent of rookie card designations and such in non-sport, and that's a huge reason why you have no idea when you pay a bunch of money for something that you think is somebody's first card in non-sport. You have no idea if it is. And I'm actually going to show toward the end of the music presentation, I'm going to show some examples of a couple of, very famous current pop stars who have a lot of cards that I don't think people realize. And honestly, I didn't even realize this the last time I was on your show, which I think was about 11 months ago. I didn't know that hardly anything that I'm going to show for these folks existed at that time. And it's all earlier than what I thought at that time was their earliest stuff.
And I also, to add on to that too, I mean, I didn't know this existed then. So we can null some of those comments that we had if we said this was a first card, which that does happen. But the thing that I kind of hate about a little bit of the rookie card notion is you have people that just look at pop reports and think, oh, this is the earliest card graded. This is the rookie card. And that's not necessarily true. Look, grading companies, they have their place in the hobby. There's a lot of good things that they do, but there's also some things that they're like iffy on. And getting new sets graded or even authenticated, that's kind of one of those iffy parts. It's a pain. There's a lot of non-sports that have not been slabbed up. And from the eyes of a sports card collector, a lot of those people don't value those cards as like early on or try to pretend that they don't exist, which I disagree with that. A lot of the collectors have more knowledge than some of the books or YouTube channels or stuff that's showcasing that information.
Yeah, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much by going back down the rookie card non-sport rookie debate rabbit hole, but just to that point you just made, when I sat down and tried to map out sort of why I feel like I do about there shouldn't be rookie collecting per se in non-sport, one of the first things you come to, which is a huge hurdle, is what is a card, right? Because in sports cards, that's relatively easy to define. And I know that there are even non-sport collectors out there with shows who primarily focus on really, really modern non-sport, who will say, well, a rookie card is something that was made in North America and is a pack-pulled traditional trading card. Okay, that works for, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. That doesn't work for vintage music. It doesn't work for ancient Hollywood. You invariably, if you want to include like the biggest stars of all time, you have to have a much more expansive and flexible definition of what is a card and what counts. And once you do that, all bets are off as to what exists somewhere in the world.
And see, like I count even gum wrappers as cards because of that Hischler set. And I think that's how you pronounce it. I've never heard it on a live stream or anything like that. Right? The Hischler gum wrappers, which is a set, I think there's 100 cards in there general. It was from 69 to 70. Super, super tough to find. Super, super tough to find even any shape. Like if you find one with like a ripped off side, you're okay with that because these things do not hit the market. And I think it's the one music website that we'll not mention it because he kind of kept it up private right now, but even says like these are some of the toughest music cards to get. But if you come from a sports background, a lot of people in sports are going to say gum wrappers. Ew, I'm never going to collect gum wrappers unless they're pack collectors. But the music fans are like, yes, give me a Hischler because these are super rare. And I know like there's a bunch of Israel sport or non-sports cards too. I think the Tel Aviv's from 59 to 63 You have some like cosmonauts, you have some astronauts, U.S. historical figures, and even soccer players. I think Pele's in there, and now Pele surprisingly sold for like 30 grand when I was looking up a sale
I
on
think
it.
there's some earlier Israeli sets too, because I've seen a set on eBay. I kind of wish now I had bought them, but there was an old Israeli set that had Vivian Lee in it, and it also had oh, I'm blanking on her name, which is horrible. The lady I collect, Wizard of Oz stuff, so I
Judy
collect
Garland, or
the
is it
actors. No, it was I know
on
Judy Garland. It was the lady who played Glinda. I'm blanking on her name right now, but I try to grab some of her cards if she looks like she did in Wizard of Oz, and so I know that there are some Israeli cards that are even older than that set you just mentioned.
There was another one that was posted on Net 54. It was like famous like Jewish people, and there was an Albert Einstein in there from the 1930s.
Cool.
I don't know what the set name is, but I saw it on Net 54, and just in the back of my mind, if I ever see the Einstein card, I'm gonna grab it. I'll just assume it's probably his rarest card. I mean, Meta Genius is pretty tough to find. Some of the 1932 backs are kind of tough to find, but that would be probably his rarest. Beyond the one that Ian just found. I don't know if you saw Ian's new Einstein pickup.
No, I'll have to look on his feed. Just real quick on Hischler, yeah. As a Doors collector, I know there's a Doors Hischler wrapper that I'd really like to find, because they only have like 4 things that I've ever been able to find that date to when Morrison was alive. And there was a guy, maybe you've seen some of these or even bought them. There is a guy in Europe who's had some pretty high condition wrappers from that set on eBay. I contacted him, and I'm like, if you have a Doors for sale, I want it. And he's like, I don't have an extra.
Yeah. So I bought my Hendrix, and I also bought my Black Sabbath off of him. But he had a Who at once, but we couldn't get a price that we both agreed on. But
so I remain hopeful, but that gives me something to shoot for. But yeah, I mean, the basic point is just that it's constant discovery. And, if you're open to whatever exists from anywhere in the world for the people you collect, you're probably going to go years and years and years of constantly finding new stuff. I mean, even, you mentioned Judy Garland. I found a couple of Judy Garlands that were probably at least a year earlier than what everyone thinks is her first card. And she's been, a star for over 80 years. And there's still obscure stuff out there that most of the market doesn't know about.
Yeah, especially like early 1900 stuff. I think most of the 1800 stuff has already been surfaced or it's been destroyed. I don't think any of that there, but that period between like the 1910s, 20s through 50s, there's so much still out there.
Well, I'll dive in to a little show and tell. And before I show the card that you show in the thumbnail, which now I have to show, I think. It's like part of the content.
I thought it was an iconic thumbnail, just Kurt Cobain.
I like that thumbnail. That was very clever. This is arguably as rare as that other card that I'll show in a moment. I've never seen another one of these for sale. I believe it is from 93-ish. It is Eddie Gama Best Collection. I know they have a set from the late 90s, at least one set, but Pelton told me, that's who I got it from, that this is 93 or 4. So that's obviously Cobain. That's actually probably my favorite Cobain pick on a card, personally. And I did not get that one for a bargain price, I will say. I don't think a lot of those are probably going to surface.
No, that's probably the only one. I've never seen it until you showed it to me. And that was probably his only copy. So
yeah, definitely. He said is the first one he'd ever seen. So, take that for what it's worth. And then really, I wouldn't probably have ever been looking for this card, but for you getting one. So I have to thank you for that. The Australian 92 Australian Smash Hits.
Except yours is in way nicer shape than mine. Mine's like wrinkled, it's creased, and I paid up pretty well for my copy too.
Well,
I spent forever trying to find that card. It just never popped up.
You know that I got an uncut sheet of them it was actually still in the magazine when I got it. I had to use a staple remover to even get the sheet of the cards out of the magazine. And so I separated them myself, and it was nerve wracking, and it's not perfect. I mean, even though it was still, in an uncut sheet, it's still got some issues. It's got some surface issues, but I'm really happy to have one nearly that nice.
Well, it's all the Australian cards too. They're never in good shape.
That's largely.
I don't know whether it's supply wise, whether it goes through the mail too, or just the collectors there don't store it as nicely as they do in the States, which I'm not saying anything about Australian collectors, because the few that I've met, they're very passionate. But just if you go back to vintage cards, which, you can count Nirvana technically as vintage music at this point, a lot of the stuff was not in the best shape. And who would have ever thought of keeping that card, really? I'm just going to go through the chat real quick because I haven't populated any of this stuff while you grab your next stuff.
Sure.
So Bradley, hey Ryan, love the channel. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Classes in session. Absolutely. I mean, we're both going to learn some stuff in here. Plus, I hope you guys learn a little bit more about non-sports. It's one of both of our passions, collecting that side of things. And I'm sure a lot of people watching the live.
Incidentally, we actually learned a lot the last time I was on your show from that Australian collector that popped on and knew all about that rock.
I hope he's on again. I can't remember the channel name, but we have vintage card collector. Love your vintage non-sports content. Then, we have a Japanese collector here. God is great. I've seen him in a few chats before.
Cool. And
then we have a good evening over here. My dad's in here, Witch from the North. He also collects a lot of music cards too, and everything like that. Then Lincoln Thomas, those Blender matchbook covers are pretty cool right there. Leonard, I still need to get the Black Sabbath one. I haven't seen it really posted.
I don't have a lot of those. I have the Hitchcock, which I really, really like.
And then Paul, he was the one who got the 3 graded recently that I shared with you. So he has the current highest grade, but you might lose that highest grade whenever you grade your copy.
Yeah, I probably will, but I'm not the world's biggest grader. I buy most of my graded stuff already graded. I don't like the submission process.
Yeah. And then is there an Einstein card that predates? So far, I only know 1924 that says these are not easy to separate. Yeah, very tough. What's up with these glasses? They're blue light glasses. Like, I don't need glasses, but I don't like staring at my screen for a few hours. So I have a few different pairs of cheap blue light glasses that I have over here. If they get destroyed, they get destroyed. If not, I just throw them on. Who's the kid to the right? And then I pick up Western Hollywood exhibits. Ugly. I don't care. I mean, they're $5 glasses. Doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, let's keep looking at some of your other music cards.
Oh, by the way, before we jump into that, it was driving me nuts because now that I'm over 50, I have more and more of those moments where I don't have the bear trap memory that I used to. It's Billy Burke. That is the name of the actress who played Glinda. So I know that people were going to lose sleep over that, or I was at least. So I had to look it up in my Flickr account.
We're getting so many comments on the glasses because these are like $5 glasses that I picked up at, like, I don't even know, Walmart or like a dollar store. They're cheap glasses for using the computer. It's not
do people need to hate that much? My God. I can put on, if it'll make you feel more comfortable, I can put on my bifocals. I wish these were just blue light ones. I need those to like read the print on any of these cards. I may have to resort to them. Okay, well, I'll just sort of rapid fire through some of this music stuff, and people want to discuss any of it, that's fine. If not, we'll just show some stuff off. For the people in the chat, but also just the people who watch this in the future, I'm really trying to direct a lot of my comments here to the viewer in the future who maybe is just like thinking about dipping their toe into non-sport cards. And so my goal here is to just show a bunch of stuff and share a few of the lessons I've learned, sometimes the hard way, in the 3 or 4 years since I've started collecting this stuff. So one of my big focuses in my music collection is the Beatles. So I think 3 graded Beatles cards here that I got since the last time. This is one of their very early Dutch gum cards, pretty high grade. I know this same picture is used on some janky cards from Finland, but that set in particular is pretty tough. Like that is not one of the easier Dutch gum cards, especially to find in high condition. So
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about Dutch cards is there's so many that are mass produced. I think the hobby right now has the perception that Dutch gum is kind of junkish, which I think a lot of people think of that for the Ogden cards as well from the early 1900s. But the thing with like mass produced sets like this, there's always going to be runs that are pretty tough to find. And that's one of those over there.
yeah, and Dutch gum is also deceptive because there are certain there were other countries in which certain sets were distributed, and I am certainly not an expert on all of them, but I know that all over kind of Central Europe there were certain sets in certain years that may have been exclusive to a different country than the Netherlands, or may have been sold in the Netherlands and Sweden and that other country. I know there are some sets that were maybe exclusive to the island of Malta, of all places. One of my favorite Orson Welles cards in my film collection, probably my favorite Orson Welles card, is actually a Dutch gum card that was, I believe, exclusive to Germany. So there are some really, really rare series of those, and some of them are cards that if they surface in like a PSA 2, that's actually a really good grade for them.
I was going to show, you mentioned Malta. They had cards all the way back in the early 1900s. This is the Kousis cards. So they look like Ogdens, but they were produced over there. I collect a lot of Kousis cards because they have different imagery. Like Ben Franklin's not in the Ogden set, but he's in the Kousis set. So that's one of the quirks on it. Just like how they have Sydney Ogdens, I kind of count kind of the Kousis. They're not exactly Ogdens, but they have the same imagery. They have a different checklist, so it's kind of fun.
And those are little wrinkles that make it so fun. I mean, there's just so many rabbit holes to go down. And again, if you want to sign on to Cardboard Connection and pull up a checklist and know exactly what's out there, then this is not for you.
Yeah, you have to actually. So checklist wise, and my dad actually had a question: is that the HB series for the Beatles card?
Let me look at it.
And then what I was gonna say too for checklist wise, as funny as it is, like you legitimately have to network to get some of these checklists. So like the 1992 Jenkies, the only reason why I found out the checklist from that is I went over to a few different Finnish websites trying to find Jenkies. I found someone selling a wrapper from an open pack, and I reached out to them saying, "Hey, do you have any information about the set? No one over in the States has the checklist on it." They had a checklist and they sent it over email, and because of that, well, they also sent another gum wrapper and a Nirvana card, but I was able to get specifically like, okay, there's 50 cards in this set. Here's all the different subjects that are in this set. So I knew who to chase because for the longest time, I had no idea who was in that set. I was hoping that there was going to be an Alice in Chains card because they don't really have anything in the 90s. Still don't, but I would assume that they do. But I was hoping that was one of those sets because we had no idea.
By the way, it says Series A on it. I had to resort to the bifocals to see it, but that question and the fact I had to look at the card and figure it out, it reminds me of something else I wanted to say. Look, some non-sport collectors that have been doing this for decades. I know a couple myself. You know a lot about a lot of stuff that I don't. I may know about a little stuff that you don't, but the reality is I'm a passionate collector, but I've only been doing this for about 3 or 4 years, depending on the area of non-sport. So I am not purporting to be an expert. I am going to, in good faith, share with your audience what I think I have learned and what I think I know. But to the extent people know that I'm wrong about something in the chat, please clarify that, because I don't want to inadvertently spread inaccurate information. And I don't want anyone out there now or who watches this later to think that I'm throwing myself out there as having some sort of massive collection or that I'm some sort of non-sport super expert. There are a few of those, but the reality is that non-sport is so vast and so deep and so multifaceted that it's very difficult for any one person to truly be an expert in the way that maybe some people can become in baseball cards or basketball cards. It's like a lake versus the ocean.
I will say the one person that the expert that I go to is Ian. Some of you guys might know him on it. Like he's collected 50 plus years, he has had so many cards in possession going to card fairs over in Europe. I mean, he doesn't know everything, granted, but like the European card market, he knows everything on that side of things. And the thing is with like knowing with non-sports, you have to know someone from the specific region. Like there's South American sellers that I've bought from. They know everything from South America. I could send them a card like, hey, what South American set? Know it right away, exact year. Like Ian would know all the European stuff. I know we've talked about Stephen Fleming on the show before for Australian cricket cards, but like he has every like piece of information about Australian cricket cards. If you have a question, you send it to him. He knows what it is. So it's just finding your experts in like the domain that you really want to learn. And also cricket cards, Sal, who is another YouTuber, he's picking up a ton of knowledge. He started cricket cards, I think, also 3 or 4 years ago, kind of like with you non-sports. But like I do feel like over that 4 years, since you've constantly put into work, I would call you an expert in music cards. I know you don't want to call yourself an expert, but I would call yourself an expert compared to where the general population is. And
Okay,
like
but
you can
right,
probably
but
count on your hand music collectors that know more than you. Like there's not a lot out there.
there are, yeah, well, we know. So, I was just going to say, if you could combine Ian with John Pelton and the music super collector in Florida, who in respect to him, we won't name, some people know who he is. And, I don't know, like the guy who runs like moviecard.com. If you could combine those 4 people, you'd almost have like a global
like,
non-sport expert.
And isn't it like the Wonder Years, like eBay as well, or something like that? Someone has, it's another music guy on there that has a bunch
of
stuff.
That's a Canadian seller, right? Yeah,
the Canadian guy.
A lot of old stuff. Yeah, they have a lot of stuff. I bought from them. I just don't know them at all. But
got it. Yeah, I meant like they had a lot of inventory. I would assume they would know some music stuff. Plus, their eBay name is named after. I'm pretty sure the Wonder Years are like a pop punk band. So.
Okay, so some more rapid fire show and tell. I'm gonna take the extra moments to take this plastic sleeves off because I think it's creating too much glare. This may not be better, not really that much better, but that's another Beatles card that I've always really liked. Not easy to get in a higher grade. I mean, not a rare card by any means, but not easy to get in like a 7 or an 8. And that's a 1960. Well, here's my eyes, 65, my eyes. I'm going to have to just put the glasses on, which I did not want to do. But next up, last Beatles card. This is one that was on my short list for a long time of Beatles cards I want to get. This is not as nice of a grade as I would like, although I think the eye appeal of the example is real good. It's from the 69 Quaderni Edis set. I don't know if you've...
Yeah, those are the like larger rectangle ones. Yep, I know exactly one.
Yeah,
Stadium.
Yeah, I think so, and that's why I like that card so much because I think it is one of the first or the second Shea Stadium concert. I can't remember which is which, but I think it's the first one. So pretty iconic, even though the card is from late in the 60s. I still really, really like it. And I recently got the Stones one from that set too, which I
picked up the Stones within the last 3 months as well. Someone had an eBay auction. I think I sniped it for like $5 or $10. I'm like, for that price, why not?
Yeah, I actually have bought 3 of the Stones ones. I have a raw one and I have a 5 and a 6. And actually the 5 is better than the 6. That's the one I'm going to show. But I really like that card. I like their outfits a lot. I think you recently got an even better version of this, but this is another one of those. This is Series G, but one of those, harder Dutch gum series. And this is a 3, but I don't think those are.
Yeah, I think mine's also a 3 or 4.
I think you got a 4 maybe, but it's kind of a bland card, but it's an early tough card of the Stones.
I know you just went through the Beatles stuff. I don't know if I've shown you this one before. Of course, the PSA did a solid 2 on how they actually put the card in the case as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's 1964 Chocolate Simon. I believe this was Spain, if I remember correctly. The thing is, all these were pasted into albums. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not going to get higher than a 2. This is actually generous being a 2, but it's 1964 as well. I love the imagery on it, but you can tell, like, how bad, like, how does this go through quality control where it's slabbed like that. But
Yeah, you have to tap the sides
I know.
strategically to reposition.
I've
By
done
the
that
way,
a few
I've
times.
never even seen that, and I love, I like that card a lot. If I saw one for sale, I'd buy one because really anything rare with the Beatles from '64. I mean, they have so much stuff that is
That's so
overproduced
common.
from '64, but some of that European stuff is really cool and really rare, legitimately rare.
My dad's asking, like, what's the grill or what's your at least favorite Beatles card?
What is my favorite Beatles card?
Yeah.
I mean, aesthetically, it's probably I have I think I showed it the last time I was on your show, that set from Spain. They're like some Fabulosas de Disco or something, and they have like a really trippy psychedelic border
Oh
that's
yeah,
yellow.
is it like the 66, I think, or something like?
I
Or
think they're from '68,
okay, then
and
I'm the wrong set.
it's a picture of the Beatles in their Sergeant Pepper's get up. That's probably my favorite aesthetic Beatles card. But my favorite card from a collecting standpoint is probably the '64 Italian one that is really, really challenging to get in anything above like a 1 or a 2. Um, Again, I'm blanking on the name of
I
that.
know
It's
which one
black
you're
and
talking
white.
about. It's like is it the one that's like sepia based or something like
It's
that?
black and white.
Yeah, that one. I don't remember what it is.
I'm gonna look it up here. I'm in my Flickr account. I'll
While
just
you look it up, I'm just gonna go through a few more things. Yeah,
okay.
Lincoln, I was talking about like the full Allison chains. I know Lane has that 93 card.
Right.
That it's not as good as like that other stuff.
I don't know if this will show up. It's Super Carda. It's
Yeah,
the
that's the one
black
right
and white
there.
one on the top. It's gonna fade out, but that's probably I have a 5 of that,
Is
which
that the highest out of five? Or
no, I think there's 3 7.5s, which I'm guessing all came from a common source. And I think 5 is the next highest grade. There are a handful of 5s.
makes sense. And then just going through some more stuff over here. Might learn about something that's live. Might have seen before and find out an antique show. What's up, Orlando? And then Lincoln just got the 64 Dolly from that Chocolate Simon set.
I
Ever
love
see
all
a
this stuff.
65 A and B C Mick Jagger, tough card to find, and card number 1.
I don't collect that stuff for the Beatles or the Stones, so I'm that's not my bailiwick. Sorry.
Dolly's mustache looks like devil horns. Grabbed actors and from the Vedetta Parade by Victoria Chocolates, 65. Yeah, so that's another set. Don't trust the grading companies on that because they label the Michael Jackson as a 69. It's a 73 card. Always do your own research on it.
Just on that point about the multi-year sets that the grading companies get a lot wrong, and if we ever get to the Disney stuff, I'll show you a couple examples of that too. But as I know you know very well, I mean, in music especially,
That's so bad.
there you got Sam Lursaker, you got the matchbook cover Vlinder, whatever, you got the Vedette and Parades, you've got a number of sets that were multi-year sets, and the grading companies will often pick 1 or 2 years in the entire decade run and say all the cards are from that set. So you cannot trust their
The
grading,
Salma stars are
especially
the worst.
PSA. PSA is terrible about dating non-sport.
They're 73 through 83, and they always just get 78 across the board. And it's like some bands weren't even around in 78. How do they have a card? It's like the 1952 Elvis cards. Elvis didn't even record a song until 54.
Right. And I think there's a
52 card
Sinatra that's like dated to the early 40s, which is like with Elvis is years before his career actually started.
Yeah, it's pretty bad with that type of stuff.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to motor through and be a little more selective here. Okay, so this is the Quaderni Edis 69 Stones card, which you said you just recently got. I really like. I mean, that's just great costumes. And then I will follow that up with what maybe I think one of the least aesthetically pleasing Stones cards of all time, which is the 68 Panini Cantanti, which is just that's 68, right? Yeah, such a bad picture of Mick. I mean, Mick just looks like he's some frumpy schoolboy in that. It's just terrible photo, but I think I got that card in an 8 for like $70 on eBay. So I
It
couldn't
just seems
resist
so
it.
cheap at that price point. I mean,
Yeah, that was too cheap.
the 68 very remind me of like a 52 tops. Like they're not rare, but just kind of like iconic on the Panini side of things.
And harder to get in higher grades often, not impossible, but you know, an 8's a pretty good grade on one of those. A 9 is great. This is
Yeah,
probably one of my favorite Stones cards too. God, I'm sorry for the glare there.
no, you're
That's
good.
better. That's better. So that's
73, right?
73 Dutch gum. That set is a lot harder than most people understand, especially to get decent grades. I believe this is a pop 1, none higher in an 8. And a lot of these cards from this set grade like 4s and 3s because a lot of them have surface problems and creases and things like that.
I'm still waiting for you to sell me that 86 Metallica. This is the guy I bought the 86 Metallica from too. So I will not be selling my copy. That is going to go to the grave with me because it's one of my favorite cards in my collection.
Well, in the collecting circle of life, I can give a little preview. I sold you that Metallica card to buy this, which is basically like the Gaudy Ruth of non-sport. You know, that is Walt Disney's first card. So
that's the best
very high
comparison of
grade.
that card. I always thought about like how would I compare it to sports cards? I'm gonna start using that, to be honest with you. Anytime someone asks me, I'm gonna give that card as an example.
Okay, I'm really gonna get myself in trouble here by what I'm about to say. But what is the first off? What is the remind me what the American Caramel President's card is that's so obscene. Is it Garfield or McKinley or something?
Oh, the 32 caramel, the McKinley.
Yeah, okay. So that to me is like the Ty Cobb almost, or not Ty Cobb, the Wagner, the Hans Wagner of like non-sports cards. I think the Walt Mickey is in the running to be like the Gaudy Ruth. And then there's a non-sport YouTuber who I've already alluded to once in this telecast, who claims that the Luke Skywalker 77 #1 is the 52 mantle of non-sports. Wait. I would say he's only right in the sense that those are two of the most overrated cards of all time.
Okay, I was about to say,
genres.
You know what I was going to call that? I was going to call that like the Ricky Henderson rookie.
Yeah, if it is the mantle, it's both in overrated. Frankly, oh, what a shame that the 52 mantles were all dumped in the ocean or the Hudson.
You know what?
Out the ocean. It was double printed. If they hadn't dumped them in the ocean, that card would be worth nothing.
Do you want to hear something crazy? I still think that's a conspiracy theory that they dumped them in the ocean. I think it was just to bring up publicity, like, oh, keep Topps relevant. I mean, what a great way for like a marketing piece to say, oh, we dumped all the extra stock into the ocean. And
before anyone accuses me who doesn't know me of being jealous that I don't have a 52 mantle, you probably couldn't find a human being who hates Mickey Mantle and disrespects him as a person and even as a player more than me. So I do not want one. No, thank you.
So a few things. It's funny though, when you mentioned that the 32 McKinley, in 2 weeks, that's the next collector that's going to be on this channel. He's working the 32 set and has the McKinley.
Wow, that's cool.
And then also just perspective-wise on the 52 mantle, you're talking $30,000 for a card right now that it's a 1 that could be a beater with multiple creases. Now, don't get me wrong, like $30,000, right? Like imagine all the non-sports cards that you could buy. Imagine all the good, even alone baseball cards, which I think a lot of baseball cards are overpriced, but think about all the baseball cards that you could buy at $30,000.
Or just anything in life.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a brand new card. For a card that has a pop of what, like 2,000? Now, there are cards that have pops 5s, 10s, 20s. I get it if it sells for $30,000. 100% get it. A common card, like a 52 mantle, I think that's way out of whack.
Yeah, and what I would say about that card, too, is part of what drives it. I mean, it has kind of jumped the shark in terms of cultural relevance, but look, if you are a huge Yankee fan or just a huge baseball Mickey Mantle fan and you just sincerely love that card, you're way into the history of Topps and you want to get it, knock yourself out if you have the money to do it. But I do think a lot of people buy that card because they think that that's what they're kind of
hype.
supposed to
It's
do
the-
if they're
it's
going to
the
be a
hype.
serious collector. And, you know,
Well, and it's also people saying that, oh, Mantle's a safe investment if you put your cards in a vintage baseball, which Mantle hasn't gone down a ton, but like a lot of people always say that, oh, put your money in Mantle cards, put your money in Mantle cards. And I think so many people just hear it all the time. They buy Mantle, and that's partly the reason why.
yeah. And strangely enough, like he's gotten, you know, the term GOAT is just thrown around way too much.
He's not a top 10 baseball player.
He's gotten elevated to a stature that he doesn't deserve based on his playing career. Now, I will say, and then we'll get off Mickey Mantle, but Mantle could have been the greatest player of all time. He actually had the talent to be better than Ruth, but he never took care of his body a day in his life. He injured his leg really badly in like his first or second year, didn't follow doctor's orders, was hampered by that. And then he was out partying till 4 a.m. with Billy Martin and Whitey Ford every night of his life, and then probably taking uppers to play the next day. And so the fact that he accomplished what he did is amazing, because the guy probably lived every moment of his life till his liver gave out, hungover. But he squandered so much talent. And if you actually look at his stats and don't do it by, you know, yearly averages, because he didn't have a long career, I agree. He's not a top 10 offensive player of all time.
Yeah, and the thing that's also, if I remember correctly, DiMaggio actually hated Mickey Mantle too. I know DiMaggio
was jealous of him, I think. You know,
I think that as well. But it was kind of interesting.
He pushed DiMaggio out. He was his successor. Whenever you're one of the guys on the Yankees who gets the single-digit numbers, and one guy's 5 and one guy's 6, that sends a message. Or 7, 6 and 5 and 7, right? Who's 6?
Oh, man.
I don't know.
Don't put in the chat. I'm going to just go through a few things and we'll continue to move forward, because it's so easy just to ramble on about the baseball cards and stuff like that. Orlando Rolling Stones cards are someone like to own. Orlando sent me a Rolling Stones ticket a while ago too, which I appreciate on there. But yeah, there's a lot of Rolling Stones you could get into like at a very cheap level. I mean, even the 68 Cantanti, you hate the design, you can pick that card up all day for $20.
You have a very early Stones card that I want to find someday, whether it's from 64 or 65. That's really cool.
Which one was that? Was it the one with the bridge in the background?
Yeah, where it's vertical and there's that bridge. It's weird. It's kind of pastel coloring. It's kind of cool.
Ooh, this is an interesting one right here. Is the Argentina Nirvana the wall sticker legit?
Well, there's more than one.
There's
in that
two of them,
set. If you're
right?
talking about the wall live, there's at least 2 Nirvanas. I mean, I have those. I mean, it's legit in that it's from sometime in the early to mid 90s.
It's not
right? Just nobody
though.
knows what year.
Yeah, so like people keep saying it's a 1990 card. There's no way it's a 1990 because Grohl joined the band mid 1990 or late 1990. So you'd have to print out the card that fast and distribute it in that year. Most likely not 1990 card. I think it's probably like towards the mid 90s. That's my assumption on it.
You think it's that late? Somebody messaged me on Instagram once when I showed one of those, because I thought it was earlier based on what I was told when I bought it. And they said that photo, or the photos that are used on those 2 cards, were not taken until late 1991. So they probably couldn't be any earlier than 92.
Yeah.
But
92 is the first year of all the other larger brands distributing them. I'm curious though, like, when did Nirvana first hit Argentina on a tour? Because, or if they even played over there. I'm gonna look that up actually really quick. I'm curious.
It's a big set, but well, one card I do want to show, and then I'll be circumspect about how much more music stuff, because I know we've been going at it and we've covered Mickey Mantle. And
real quick, I just loaded it up on set list. So Nirvana first played in Argentina in October 1992.
I think that card is probably from sometime between late 92 and 94 is just my gut. And it could have been put out after Cobain, committed suicide. It could have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But being that the first time they played is 1992, it's hard to say, like, why would they have a card from 1990? They never played in that country. They didn't even blow up in 1990. I don't believe so. So it's kind of.
this is kind of a sort of a fall on the sword type of thing, because I know when the last time I was on, I showed off a bunch of my Prince cards and said, I like these way better than the 79 Warner Brothers, and I don't care if I ever own that card. Well, I finally broke down and bought one. It's a 6. I mean, I'd love to have a 7 someday, but it's a good looking 6. It's a 6 because of corner issues, but I did finally get one because I could get that at a price that I thought was a bargain, which is often not the case with that card because it's a rookie. So anyway, I did buy it. I like it. I don't love it for what it's worth.
Now that card has a better chance of being the quote unquote 52 mantle of music cards or like non-sports cards than that 77 Skywalker, because it does have a higher floor and I think it has a little bit more collectability than that. But that's my assumption on that.
Well, the one thing about the Luke, and hey, I collect vintage Star Wars. I don't own the Luke Skywalker #1. I've been thinking in the next couple of years of maybe trying to buy like a 7 or even an 8 of it, but I just don't love it. There are other Luke cards in that set that I like way better. And one thing that bugs me, and this is more general to like a more general non-sport issue. One thing that bugs me about that vintage Star Wars set is a bunch of people in the market have propagated this idea that the only rookies of the main characters are the first like 8 cards in the set. That the first time a character appears in the set is their only rookie card. Okay, I obviously think the rookie thing in non-sport is dumb, but to me, I don't understand that at all coming from the sports.
So you know why that
well, it's for investors, right? So it's easy for somebody to glom on to what I should buy.
It goes back to the Superman set. So it's a 39 Superman. It's one of those years. But card #1, greatly outsells everything else. So.
And they do it with Batman too. But those sets, it makes sense because the first and the last card in those old sets should always be worth more because of condition issues in the way they were handled.
Yeah, and also I think that just being card #1, people think like this is first Superman. There you go on that side of things. It's like the first ever. I mean, they're going to have other Superman releases. And then, I mean, like you said, the 66 Batman, I think, I don't really collect Marvel stuff or comics, so I don't know that whole realm, but I'm sure there's a few others too.
Yeah, I think there's some Spider-Man cards from like 1966. But the thing about, just to make one final comment about that general point, and people do that a lot with like character cards in modern sets. But in the Star Wars set itself, and I don't have these handy because I wasn't planning on talking about this, but the first Han Solo card in that set is, I think, card #5 from memory. It's not a great looking card. There's a Han Solo card from that same first series with the blue borders. I think it's number 58. This is the coolest Han Solo card ever. Like, I think most Star Wars collectors would agree. And my point about that is, I would say any card released in 1977 in any of the series is a rookie in a sense if you're going to play the non-sport rookie game. But how do you argue that a character card that was distributed in the very same packs as the card you're saying is the only rookie does not have equal status to it? Like, they came in the same.
They have to. And Orlando, I'm going to say over here, I'll go back to Lincoln, but Orlando says the first card, like Wilt Chamberlain's rookie and in action. Like, I count the in action as a rookie card. So
right.
I see where that's coming from on there.
But anyway, I mean, those are among the many issues that you have to sort through if you're going to collect, rookie cards in the non-sport realm, because different people apply their own rules and there's no general agreement. And people throw around the term rookie, sellers and collectors alike, very, very liberally, not always appreciating how complicated of a question that is with respect to many rookie cards.
Well, it's to sell the card. That's why.
Non-sport cards, I should say.
We'll say it's a rookie card today, and tomorrow, if they have another card, that's the rookie card.
Yeah, and the people that bother me are obviously the ones who do know better, who know that what they're selling as a rookie is not that person's first card. I have no time for them. I think a lot of people do it, and they're just repeating something they were told when they bought it, or something that's out in the ether. Quite a bit.
I've seen a 69 Doors labeled as a rookie card before, and I had a chuckle on that one.
Yeah, and I know who did that, I think, and I told that person, I know that's not their first card, so why is your eBay listing saying that? I don't talk to that person anymore, but um
Sports card data. I assume there's a lot of vintage Stranger Things talk. Most of those didn't even exist in this time period.
um yeah, for what it's worth, Dustin, I don't know you, so it feels weird to call you by your first name, but I do watch your show a fair amount. So what I know about Stranger Things cards is more than I want to know, but it's all from you. So thank you. You have dispensed a lot of knowledge to me about Stranger Things cards, which I appreciate. I actually like that he works into his sports card side show a good amount of content about non-sport. I appreciate that actually.
It's good because I think also the modern non-sports collectors eventually trickle down to vintage. It happens with everything. You start modern, you work backwards.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? This is one Beatles card I wanted to show, not graded, but there's a series, and I have some stones from this set too. But this set's kind of
French,
cool.
right?
What's that?
This one's French too, I think. If I
Yeah,
remember
it's
correctly.
Publistar. I think it's from either 55 or 56, but there are a number of different Beatles cards, some cropped differently vertically, some horizontal. There are a number of Stones cards, including some different sized ones. This is the biggest one of the Stones cards I have, but a lot of them are decal edged.
Yeah, I have one of them that are decal edged. I'm not too sure about like why some of them are decal edged and why some of them are just like straight cut.
Right. And like this big Stones card actually has some printing on the back, whereas most of them are blank back that I have. So I don't know if there were different series. My working understanding is they came in some sort of, like food product, like pastries or cookies or something. And so maybe there were different series and different products.
You know what? I wonder if it's kind of like the 51 and 52. It's the multi-sport release. It's escaping me right now. It was with baseball, boxing, everything like that. How they had two cards together and you separated them. I think I mean, it could have it kind of like that, and then have a few cards at the very top that possibly weren't perforated. But I mean, until someone knows, I don't know. I don't really know too many French sellers. I've communicated with a few for Felix Potent cards, but I don't know if they really do music. So I'm not sure if they would know.
You mentioned tickets a few moments ago. I bought a few tickets lately, just stuff mainly connected with the Fillmore and the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, the Bill Graham venues, just because the art on them, I don't find are not great.
You're lagging out a little bit, unless it's my side.
What's that?
You were lagging out unless it was my side for a second.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
So was just saying I've been buying a few tickets that are visually appealing from Bill Graham produced stuff at the Fillmore West and the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco. So that's a dead one, obviously, and somewhere here, although I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I got a few Doors ones from one of I think their second appearance, maybe at the Fillmore in 1967, I believe. And then I got a few too of Led Zeppelin. I can't remember offhand the year. I want to say it's 69, but it could be 70. But I think those are kind of cool. Not cards per se, but card-like.
There's I picked one up recently. I saw it post on eBay. I picked up a 1969 or 1970 Jimi Hendrix postcard, but it's looks like just like the poster from those concerts, but it was distributed over in the UK. So they must have sold postcards at that show or beforehand.
Yeah, I know the Graham shows in San Francisco. That was a frequent thing. I mean, some of those venues, they would like those images on the tickets would be the poster, and then they would print them on like handbills and postcards, and then the tickets themselves. And from what I understand, at least at some of the shows in the San Francisco venues, like people would get the tickets shortly before the show, basically take them into the lobby to wait, and then they would be collected before they went in. So I think a lot of the tickets have
Still exist
survived in
because of
pretty
that.
nice shape, and they were like sold through his estate or whoever bought his estate.
That's interesting. I'm glad they did that though, but it's so interesting to think about.
But those tickets are beautiful. I actually the Doors one that I showed, Bill Graham ended up marrying the lady who painted that. They were married for a short time, but she actually painted that before they were married. But I think that show is one of the first times they played. No, it wasn't one of the first times they played Light My Fire, but it was that show occurred, or that series of shows occurred the week that Light My Fire went to #1. That was it. So kind of cool.
I'm going to just go through a few comments real quick.
Sure.
You actually have a super active chat tonight. So let's go over here. Hold on. Season 5. Yeah, I can't wait for season 5 on that too, for Stranger Things. Was it next year still, 2025? And then what do you think about those 2000s like playing cards that you see on eBay? I don't really like them, being unlicensed as they are. I think it's kind of too new to not have licensing. But I know we're going to talk about some modern stuff on the 2000s that you have, which would probably be a good segue to that, unless you have other stuff too. Right, yeah, let's go.
I don't really, for what it's worth, I don't love playing card motif cards, and I don't overly love game cards that look like TCG cards. I mean, sometimes I'll get them if I really like the photo, or if the person just doesn't have a lot of other stuff, like more traditional cards with more traditional images. But I, for one, I know there's like that very early, or a couple early Cobain cards that are, on playing cards, and I just
the Krangs and Enemy. There's 92 and 93.
I mean, I love to find a Jane's Addiction thing, and I know Perry has a card in one of those playing card sets that actually says Jane's Addiction, and I've thought about buying it, but I just don't like them personally. One band I've never been able to find something for other than this that dates to like their early active period is the Jefferson Airplane. And I don't traditionally like illustrated cards of performers, but I think this is like that 72-ish Monty Gum set.
Yeah, so those are actually 72. There's the ones that have like the colored borders, I believe, are 73. The circles are 74. That's a classic example, by the way, for everyone watching, where all the grading companies will say 1972. They just got lazy. Every Monty Gum is 1972. That's like saying a 1955 Topps card is 1952 because it's distributed by Topps.
I just want to show this real quick because it kind of bleeds into just an observation I wanted to make about a different type of peril of collecting certain people, right? And maybe that'll be applicable to one of the folks I'm going to show in a little more depth. But I recently decided that I was going to collect some Michael stuff from the Thriller era. So basically from the release of Thriller up until the point that he released Bad. So like Thriller and the Victory Tour. And this, I think, is the Pop One None Higher of his 84 Panini Smash Hits card, which is obviously a picture from the Billie Jean video. But I didn't collect Michael stuff purposefully for a really long time, just because of the personal allegation stuff. And, I try to, and I bring it up because I know it's Michael Jackson's a hugely collected guy in music cards, and so many people, including I think yourself, want like the early 70s stuff. I don't want Child Michael, because when I knew him, it was Thriller Michael. But he's an interesting case study because certainly the biggest pop culture star on the planet, during the 80s. And we can quibble about Michael Jordan maybe passing him, but outside of the realm of sports, certainly the biggest star. And we don't know that he did some of the horrible things that he's been accused of. And I generally try to keep my esteem for people's creativity separate from their personal life if I can. But those particular allegations against him are kind of the area where I find it very hard to overlook that. And so I wanted to show that because I'm interested in people's thoughts. Because if anyone wants to look at me and say, "How dare you, collect cards of a probable pedophile," I'd say, you know what? I get where you're coming from, and I feel very conflicted about owning those cards, even though I like them.
And it's like that with sports too. There's so many athletes that have had that happen. I mean, recently, obviously, Wander Franco, and I think the hobby in general is tough as complete crash. It saddens me as a Rays fan that all this happened, both to the victims and also like as an organization to have our top prospect, like that whole situation happen again. Josh Hamilton being the first person, not in this like not what Wander did, but Josh Hamilton kind of just throwing away his career, and now we have Wander Franco kind of just bad Tampa Bay Rays luck. But I mean, if you look back on like the football side of things, didn't Kobe have some incident with that as well?
Yeah,
And then you
and
look back at like
you can't really talk about that now, right? Because he died young.
yeah,
But
and then
yeah,
Jim Brown too. I know he passed away recently, but didn't he have some domestic assault as well?
yeah, that. I mean, I don't think he was ever accused of rape like Kobe was, but
Yeah.
yeah, people are complicated. Look, and I'm not going to gloss over any of that. I think Kobe is a great example too, and but for the unfortunate circumstances of his early passing, I think his legacy with many people would be more complicated. But you know what? By the same token, Michael Jordan is not a good person. It's just that he existed in an era where the media kind of helped
Whatever.
him propagate a certain image. A lot of people who are famous and powerful
They have
throughout
a
time
private
were
life
not good
that's
people.
horrible and that we don't even know from like the public perspective until it ends up leaking.
Yeah, so but I did want to throw that out there because I'm curious the extent to which people do or do not think about those things when they decide who to collect.
That is an interesting point too. I'm a few others I'm just gonna go through real quick. Does Chaz Jenkel have a card? Don't know who
I
that
don't know who that
is.
is. Sorry.
90 Roger Waters played in Berlin to commemorate the wall coming down. That's when the set's based around.
Right.
Yeah, it's still I just don't see it being a 90
Yeah,
card. I
there's
mean,
a ton of people in that set, right? Like Madonna, I think
yeah,
that's a
Slayer's in
lot
there
of
too.
top
I actually
stars.
have the Slayer card, but they have earlier stuff. Ryan, surprised you haven't bought the uncut sheet of 2002 Coachella. I'll be honest, like it could be a cool poster on my wall. I need one more poster right there, which I was gonna get like a band poster eventually when I see something at a concert I want. But I don't like uncut sheets. Like it's just something about them that I'm just not a fan of, and that's the reason why. Although, like I guess someone could just buy the sheet and cut it up, but like WB great history goat. That's a student of my knowledge now. MJ probably triggered a sports reckoning. Elvis, yeah, don't trust Elvis dates. By the way, his first card I would assume would be that number one from the top set. Although there's like a maple leaf gum, which may be earlier, but that has a wide date range. I just haven't studied it too much. Oh, it's 1950 or 52 cards. They're in the 60s. Someone intern probably just labeled them as 1950s, and that's why the whole hobby.
Marilyn Monroe outside of music is another person in that bucket, and so is like Brando. It's just so hard to figure out if you care what's truly first.
Yeah. 72, Michael Jackson. I agree. That's why I haven't bought it. Don't like sheets either. Want the strokes. Yeah, I need the strokes card from there. Ryan, are you going to Culture Collision? I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to any card shows in February. I have a Ultra that month, so I need to just focus on that. And then Jack Johnson, the musician. Yeah, he's in there too. But I haven't really listened to Jack Johnson's music, although I have Jack Johnson boxer cards.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into the part that I mean the chat is probably gonna hate me even more for getting into this, but I'm doing this for posterity. And the reason I wanted to do this using Taylor Swift as an example, and I can use Lady Gaga too to the extent I want to take the time. But Brian Gray was recently on Jeremy Lee's show, and I mean no disrespect to Mr. Gray at all, whether you like him or you hate him or both. At different times, he's definitely a huge figure in the hobby, and I liked a lot of what he had to say on that program about non-sport. I mean, I happen to agree with him at least, so I liked it for that reason, right? I mean, he was saying that he was buying a lot of vintage non-sport and that he thought in general vintage non-sport was probably one of the best value propositions in all of trading cards right now. I do agree with that. I'm not telling people to go buy it, but for what this collector's opinion is worth, I look at vintage non-sport now, and I think a lot of the thoughts I thought about vintage basketball and football in like 2017. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me why some of it is so low. But in the course of that discussion with Jeremy Lee, he also indicated that he had recently purchased, I think he said $50,000 worth of Topps Trumps cards, which is a particular series of like game pop culture game cards from the UK, which I think actually started back in the late 70s. I want to say 77 maybe. But in the last couple of decades have featured a lot of global celebrities, not always actors or musicians, but even, titans of the tech industry and things like that, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and the Google guys, and all of them have cards in this Top Trump series. But he was mentioning how he thought those were a tremendous value because they have so many people's first cards. And I believe he mentioned Taylor Swift, suggesting that I'm guessing the 2015 Top Trumps card would be Taylor Swift's first card, at least by herself. If I misunderstood him, I apologize. But whether he did or didn't mean to say that, a lot of people think that. And a lot of people think actually that this card from 2011, American Pie, is her very first card. And then that this Top Trumps card from 2015 is her first solo card. Neither of those things are true. And I want to just run through really quickly to demonstrate that that's not the case. And I'll do it real quick with Lady Gaga too, but I won't belabor this. Then I'll jump to some Disney stuff. But I don't know if people consider discs cards. I really don't love them, but you kind of can't categorically say no because of some bands like Led Zeppelin.
I was going to say, like, Led Zeppelin, 1970 and 73. And, I mean, technically they have a 72 in that set and 71. There was like a 4-year release window.
Yeah, so this is not overly rare. Like, there's a guy in Nashville that has a bunch of them, and you can get them on eBay for like 40 or 50 bucks. But this is a promo. It's made of cardboard like a card. It's just in circular form, but it's a promo that her label at the time, Big Machine Records, put out right before her first album came out. So this actually dates to 2006. You can see on eBay a couple of examples of a rectangular promo card of hers that are, the sellers want like $15,000 to $25,000 a piece for them. What I understand those are cards that she had made herself. She signed them and either dated them in many cases or personalized them and handed them out to people on the streets of Nashville to market herself before her first album came out. I don't have one of those. I'd love to get one because I collected with my daughter. Swift kind of made one in Minneapolis this summer, and we're going to see her again in New Orleans next October. And so this is one of those parts of my collection that I really share with her. But I would love to have one of those cards for that collection, but I ain't going to pay more than a couple $1,000 for one. So I'll probably never get one. But again, that raises another question about what are rookies in non-sport. Is a promo card that an artist themselves makes and hands out to people. Is that a rookie card, or is that like an XRC or what? Okay,
I will say I hate the XRC acronym because people always say, oh, something's earlier than what they perceive. Oh, that's an XRC.
Yeah, thank you, Jim Beckett. Right. Like, Beckett created this whole thing with rookie cards, right? Like, people don't realize that. Like, people weren't so gaga over rookie cards. I started collecting in about 1981. It really exploded in like 83, 84. And a lot of it was driven by the Beckett magazines. Incidentally, I'm old enough that my first Beckett was an annual trade paperback that was like that thick and had minuscule print. So that's how old I am. But, and I understand why he did that. And I think his creation of the whole rookie card designation, or his amplification of it, if it existed in some pockets of the hobby before that, that's what really propelled sports card collecting into that first boom. But it's kind of a double-edged sword, especially when you try to apply it to non-sport subjects.
I'm curious for some of the people in here that are vintage while we go through some of their stuff, like vintage, like collected 70s and 80s. My dad might know too. Was it like the Pete Rose rookie card that kind of started to explode that rookie trend? remember you bring me up or you tell me the story about that. I could be wrong.
Well,
But
and I don't know when the first heyday of the Rose rookie was, but I remember it was the card in the hobby way over 52 Mantle in like 84, 85 as he was approaching Cobb's record.
yeah, my dad might know. He owned a store in the 90s and went to shows in the 70s and 80s. And then also, I'm just going to go through these real quick. Robert Johnson lobby card. Do they exist? I didn't know if they would exist or not. That'd be pretty cool. Lifelong Metalhead by Beyonce SI this week, 25 years ago, and beat me up. There's a lot of metal cards you can buy to offset that purchase. Eminem, Swift, Top Trumps produced. Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, I know from the cricket side of things, they also made sports too. Lots of crickets out
Yeah,
there.
although with Top Trumps, there are some sets that are way more obscure. I can show one of a Gaga card from a set that's way less produced.
Yeah, I'm curious if you have that one there. And then you said there's some questions on authenticity. You have a few from the Giddy Lee collection that recently went to the market. Wait, so Giddy Lee collection had a Robert Johnson lobby card? That would actually be kind of cool if it's from his collection. Let me know, Brendan. Britney Spears promo. Sports Card Investor had one of those, and then Taylor Swift, Minneapolis this summer. Willie Nelson's show instead, prices lower, but crowds were higher, much higher.
Yeah. I got to give it to that was, hey, I've seen Nine Inch Nails 14 times. I have very eclectic music taste. I'm not your probably prototypical Swiftie wannabe, but she was really damn good. And I've never seen anybody play for 3.5 hours. I mean, it was the best solo.
You got to get into some prog metal music. Dream Theater will play over 3 hours if you see them.
But I don't know, that crowd was an amazing experience. I'll just say, like, I've never seen a crowd that enthusiastic except maybe at Game 3 of the 2016 World Series. But that crowd was half the size of the Taylor Swift crowd. So back to her cards real briefly. I'm going to jump to 4 cards from Bravo magazine in Germany that are from 2009 and show them real quick. All of these are prior to that American Pie card with Kanye.
And to say too, Bravo has a lot of releases, just not 2009. I actually have a 2002 Linkin Park Bravo card. I need to eventually get that graded, but
the Bravo cards go back, I think, at least into the 70s.
Yeah, I was gonna say 70s or 80s.
I have some Madonna ones and some Indiana Jones ones from the mid 80s. I think they might even go back into the late 70s. But there's that. This one I've actually never seen except this copy. This is also 2009 Bravo. It's a little bit bigger. This is another one. And then this one's kind of interesting because all those that I showed, which I showed them fast so you wouldn't know, but they're all perforated, at least on some edges. So they were clearly distributed like that Nirvana card in a sheet in a magazine, and you had to separate the perforations. This one is also a Bravo card. It's much bigger. It's double-sided. It doesn't have a different person on the back like most Bravo cards. But this is not perforated. It's bigger. It's like a more like a postcard size. And these were sold. There were 3 envelopes, 3 subsets of 4 that were distributed in these envelopes, which Pelton tells me actually were in the magazines. I wasn't sure about that, but those particular cards were distributed in the magazines, but in these envelopes instead of perforated. There are numerous Taylor Swift cards from Bravo from other years, going up at least as recently as I think 2019. Same story is true of Lady Gaga. A lot of people will say this 2015 Top Trumps is a rookie. This is actually a 2012 Top Trumps that is a much rarer set. It's called Digital Heroes. But she also has numerous, at least Bravo cards that date back at least as far as 2009. And some of these are really cool. There's one. This one's a lot bigger. That's kind of a cool picture.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one post on your Instagram before.
This is one from 2009 as well. And then this one's from 2011. I have several from 2011. I won't show them all, but I just love the colors on this one. That's such a cool looking card to me. But So the point there is, just again, you can't trust what anyone says is someone's first card. And, I was even trying to think, are there arguments for those top trumps cards as to why they would be legitimate and not these Bravo cards? And it's like, well, it's not like they're pack pulled, right? Like they're distributed in sets in a pack.
Yeah, we got to use the logic against people. They're overseas issues. They're not pack pulled.
Right. So what's the difference? A magazine versus sold as a set? That's where the arguments, I think, start to break down. So I think just be careful. Like I would much rather have the Bravo stuff. And there's another German magazine, pop magazine called Popcorn, that has some early Swift cards that are all at least pre 2015. I am paying off right now a lot of 16 Swift cards from a Hong Kong magazine called Yes that are all things I didn't even know existed 3 weeks ago. And Pelton recently found a Belgian music set from 2011 that I never knew existed that has 4 Taylor Swift cards in it too that I'm buying.
Are there any rock or metal bands in those sets? Because there's a lot of rock and metal bands I don't have cards of yet that I want to.
Well, he'll probably be posting that stuff on. Yeah, I mean, I think he's breaking the set, so he'll probably post. I'm not sure who else is in it.
Send me some pictures. I'll do some research. I'm kind of curious.
They're not great cards because they just show albums. They're more like they're more like top trumps. They show like certain achievements, like number of album sales and streaming and songs, things like that. They're not very interesting cards, but I'm trying to get for my daughter as many Taylor cards as I can find, so I'm buying them. But you probably, if it was the only thing you could find of someone, you'd buy it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't.
That makes sense. All right, guys, let's put some more questions about music, and then we're going to shift over to Disney. I'm just going to go through the chat real quick and go through all that. But I think this is a good breakaway point where we can talk about the Walt and Disney character collection. A few signed baseballs and autos didn't match authentic examples. I thought you were saying there was going to be Robert Johnson in a card. I'd be like, man, that would be kind of a grill of music cards. Felt that way about seeing Tom Petty. I wish I saw Tom Petty. I went to Rockville, I think it was 2015, and Tom Petty played the week after, and I was just tired from that festival and decided not to go, and he passed away. Was it 15 that Petty passed away? Or was it 18? Or when did Tom Petty pass away? Hold on. I know it was right after, like, when I went to a Rockville festival.
I forewent an opportunity to see him in college, like my freshman year of college. I think what was his was it Full Moon Fever? Was that what's the name of the album with like all his big hits when he first really took off as a solo artist? Or it was like his second big solo album or whatever of the 80s.
It was 2018, by the way. I misspoke, but that was also when I think it was Soundgarden. I don't know. I went to Rockville 2018, and then the week after he was playing in Tampa, and I skipped it, and that was my only chance.
Yeah, I wish I had seen him too. I should have gone back then. It was
the
like
other things. Springsteen and Pearl Jam played for 3 to 4 hours. I've seen Vetter. I haven't seen Pearl Jam yet. They don't really visit Florida that often. Surprised no cards came out of Geddy Lee's collection. I know he's a big autograph guy and collect a lot of Negro League stuff, but maybe he just didn't want to sell. Joe Jackson example. And then pack pulled has to matter, but if they don't have anything else, that's the rookie. And then
I don't think pack pulled has to matter. I mean, that's an opinion. It's probably a widely shared opinion, but I don't think it's a universal opinion, especially in non-sport, given that so few cards do you consider what's pack pulled then? Like the Panini Cantanti stuff is pack pulled, I presume, because they were actually distributed in packs. I mean, where do we draw those lines?
And then some of those were distributed with the stickers or gum or whatever.
With the books and with albums and
Hi from New Zealand. Sorry if you discussed this already, but is there a music card database or board to help create a source database? I'm actually working on something with that, but I'm not going to talk about it too much on here because it's still under development. But don't worry, in a few months, I'll explain why I've been kind of inactive posting content, but it is being worked on. And then Lincoln Tom Petty is the greatest rookie. I don't really love the design of the 77 Monty Punk.
I like that set. I'm with him. I love that set.
Really? I hate him, man.
I don't have the Petty card. I don't like the Petty card, actually, but I like that set. I don't like it just big faces.
There's so many other great sets from the 70s. I don't know. I I'm not a fan of the
I
77.
really like the Sex Pistols like group playing card in there. I like a lot of the Kiss cards. Some of the Blondie cards are pretty cool. Yeah, I like that set a lot. And it's an important set, whether you like it or not, right? You would agree with that?
It reminds me of this urban explorer that picked up a Yes album, the band, had poo on the back, and the poor fella considered amputation. He was so grossed out. What? Why is Madonna and her cards so cheap, way underrated?
Oh, I agree with you there, man. Madonna, especially.
And then Petty had a heart attack the night of the Las Vegas shooting and got buried by the news. All right, I think that's a good pivot point into the Disney side of things.
By the way, I think that was your dad, wasn't it, who said about
Yeah.
sharing Madonna? If you didn't see the first episode with me on it, you should watch that for the Madonna stuff.
He probably did watch it, but it's been such a long time ago.
All right. So the Disney stuff that, I mean, you get kind of a, it's kind of a Moss Eisley vibe here in the chat tonight. I don't know that they're down with Disney. The other thing I want to observe about Disney before I go into this, and I think it kind of loops back in a maybe 2 steps removed way to the Michael Jackson thing. It's like, if you had asked me 3 years ago, what is the single kind of most globally iconic brand or franchise, I would have said Disney without question. I think, I know some people today would say Pokemon or something like that. I'll just tell you, if people went up the Amazon for several days and made contact with a tribe that rarely has human contact, somebody there might know who Mickey Mouse is. They're not going to know who Pikachu or Charizard is. And so I do think that Disney was probably the most enduringly iconic global brand that probably touched in some way the most people on the planet in their childhood. I don't know how the rest of the world feels about Disney today, but obviously with the kind of civil cold culture war that we have going on in the United States, I mean, half the population just hates Disney for political reasons now. So I don't know how that's ultimately going to impact a lot of these cards. And I just think that's an interesting question, because you wouldn't think that a company that large and influential that had been around for 100 years now, and impacted so many people to some degree in childhood, would become like vilified to that many people, unless they had some sort of industrial accident that killed a bunch of people.
I think it'll go out of the news in a year. People always just have to have their talking points to be in headlines. And I think,
but I think it is interesting, because whether you agree with it or not, and you know that I don't, and that's probably fairly obvious from all the Disney stuff that I have, but there are people who for sure would never buy a Disney card today that might have 5 years ago, just because of those reasons. So I do think it's a factor. I just don't know how big of a factor. It's interesting to have to.
You're lagging a little bit.
What's that?
You cut out a little bit.
So anyway, I'll go through a few of my better Disney things real quick, and then we can cut around.
Did I ever show you with that Walt, the original photo? One of the dealers that I bought off of before had the original, I think, Type 1 photo for that. He used to set up at a card show.
Yeah, I think you did show me that. That's really cool. This card, I think Gowdy Ruth is also not a bad comparison in a way, because this card is also not rare. It's just rare in higher grades. Like, there are quite a lot of these cards out there. There are reprints, so you have to be careful. But this is not a particularly rare card in and of itself. It's just that once you get above a 7, it starts getting pretty limited, the grade scarcity.
I still think there's a good portion of those probably in that 5 to 6 range, just because of a lot of the UK collectors. They did an immaculate job keeping their cards. So over there, they're very, I mean, we've talked about it before, where they're set collectors, but they have binders where they're all tobacco sleeve binders, and they'll put all the cards there. So I still think there's a good amount of those out there. The only thing is, a lot of that's already been cherry picked from the card show stocks and some of the dealers. So it'd be more the private collectors that have them. So it's something that you don't expect in the next 5-10 years, but I could see 20, 30 years from now, some really high grades getting out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just to tell you where it is now, in case, because there are still a lot of people that look for that card. That's sort of a rite of passage non-sport card for a lot of people. And I looked this up. So I believe PSA, I don't know the SGC totals, I didn't look those up, but PSA to date, I think, has graded roughly about I want to say like about 530 or 40 of those. That's a PSA 7.5. I believe there are 6 of those and there are 30 higher. I think there are 3 9s, no 10s, a couple of 8.5s, and like 25 8s. But there are more 8s than there were a couple of years ago when I bought that 7.5. Not a lot. What you've really seen an explosion in on those in the last year or so has been the 5, 6s, and 7, even 7s. The 7 population is a lot higher. But if you are interested in that card, I mean, you can find some good looking 5s for under $700. It's not cheap. You can get 4s probably for $300 or $400. You probably get a 6 for $1,000. If you want to go 7 or above, it starts getting a little pricier. And, but I know they've come down, and part of it is just the general market. But when I bought that 7.5, there were some 8s for sale on eBay for $12,000. And I think an 8 just sold at auction a few weeks ago for less than 5, maybe even less than 4. So big difference. Now's not a bad time probably to pick up that card if you can find a high eye appeal one in like a mid grade for a good deal.
Do you think a 9 would reach that 5-figure mark?
Yeah, I do.
I think if a 9 went right now, I would think it'd be about 15. But it's hard.
There's a lot of Disney, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this with the vintage Disney stuff is just that I know they're, notwithstanding everything I said about them being culturally divisive for some people now, there's obviously a lot of new money flowing into Lorcana and the shiny Disney 100 stuff from China and even the UK now. So, some of those people are probably going to start wondering at some point what's out there for Disney stuff, that's older. And there's actually a lot of stuff going back to the 30s. That's the point of what I'm about to show.
Yeah, there's like was it Walter Rabbit or something like that from like a strip card from the
Oswald the Rabbit. Yeah. Like so yeah, he was Walt's first main character. And he somehow lost the rights to him in the 20s, and that spurred the creation of Mickey Mouse, who debuted in Steamboat Willie in 1928. But there are a few Oswald the Rabbit cards from the 20s and 30s that
I've seen one at a show before.
Interestingly, and I don't remember all the details of this, and there are people who are way bigger Disney historians and Disney collectors and Disneyana experts than me. But I do recall that when NBC wanted to hire Al Michaels from Monday Night Football, when they got the Sunday night games and he went over to NBC Universal somehow controlled the rights to Oswald the Rabbit at that point. And ESPN being owned by Disney, a condition of them allowing Al Michaels to go to NBC was that Disney get back the rights to Oswald the Rabbit. So I think it was called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, I think was his name. So that was always a bone of contention apparently for Walt throughout the rest of his life. Like he was always bitter about losing the rights to that character. And so interesting little sports tie in there.
That is a really good story.
This is also a pretty available card of Walt from 1936, another tobacco card, as was the 31 with Mickey. This is another card that is not rare. It's just harder in high grade. Like 8's pretty good. There are more 9s of this. I'm not sure if there are any 10s, but that's a solid card. I think there's actually an 8 up or maybe even a 9 up on eBay right now of that one. But I like that very dapper photo of him. This is a much more obscure Walt card from the early 50s. I really like that photo a lot. Very few of these graded. I believe this is from Ireland. Ian would know for sure. I know he has a very good copy of it as well. But these are interesting because all of them have like punch holes.
Staple holes, right?
Staple holes. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they were distributed, but they were stapled in several places. So you can't really, there is one of these that's graded like a 5 or a 6, and I don't know how, but you can't really find these above like a 1 or a 1.5 because of that.
That's one of my
really well centered for that card.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves in the hobby is the assumption that every card, even if it's been distributed with the manufacturer with the hole, deserves a 1. I 100% disagree with that notion. Cards that have holes from the manufacturer or one that are folded over, that should be ignored.
Yeah, that Metallica card should not be docked for being folded because that's how it came from the pack, right? It's pack pulled. Oh my God.
That actually is a pack pulled card, right? But the thing is, there's also boxing cards from the 1950s. I think it's called Kitties, if I remember correctly. There's a Sugar Ray Robinson in that set, and I think a Joe Louis. It's either 48 or 50. They literally have the staple marks on the side, and everyone's going to be graded a 1. It's just so dumb.
I agree, but you're then requiring a body of knowledge by the graders that's just not likely to happen with that obscure stuff.
But there should be some documentation on it. I mean, for how much money that people spend for grading across the board, there should be some knowledge. And like some people spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get cards graded. I mean, the fact that a half point or a point sometimes on a card could be worth the $20,000 difference. I mean,
I agree. I think grading is a necessary evil.
Now don't get me wrong. Like the card that you just showed in the boxing examples, they're not $20,000 cards. They're not.
Right.
They never will be. But there should be some exceptions for those type of cards, or the Metallica, where it's like we know from the manufacturer that this is, I wouldn't call it a defect, but that's how they distribute the cards. It's okay. And it's like the 68 Cantantes. Some of them will have that tape or glue on the back. That should be ignored. It should that's how they were in the packs. Why are you penalized?
Yeah, and you got that from me, but I heard you say that recently. I do want to clarify one thing. They didn't come out of the packs looking like that. It's that the glue strips that were used to affix them to albums were packaged with some of the stickers. Oh. So they actually had to be applied, but they were distributed with the stickers, some of them anyway, because the purpose was to stick them in albums.
Got it. Okay, so I'm sorry for that wrong information.
Well, I know, and I'm just, I heard that and I'm like, oh, I probably was unclear in how I explained that. I do want to say too on the grading thing, because you make a number of excellent points and I'm agreeing with them. I am showing mostly graded cards. I have a couple boxes here of raw cards that if we had unlimited time, I would show too. I'm showing these, I guess, largely because I think this is what most people want to see. Maybe that's not true. If I have a really significant card, there's a few of them that are raw, I'll show it. But I have definitely selected stuff for purposes of this show to err on the side of the graded stuff, but for good or ill. But I love raw cards. I'm fine with them. Like I said, I don't submit a lot of my raw stuff for grading. I buy it graded.
There's some stuff that's fun to grade. Like they do pop. Like one of my sets I'm building is the Lone Jack Inventors, and like in these SGC cases,
those look so good in the SGC.
They look great, man.
They do. That's great.
I love those. And like for me, I'll grade these, and I'm so close to finishing this set. Like,
well, I hope you get there. Those are beautiful. I'm glad you share those.
That is my favorite set. Like out of everything out there, baseball, football, non-sport, music, like I don't care. Like these inventor cards. The nicest looking cards I've ever.
I don't own any of them, but I love looking at them. They are works of art. They are truly works of art. This is not a work of art, but another very rare Walt card from 1952. I believe it's German, if I remember correctly. I actually have a Mickey card from this set too that is ungraded. I probably won't get to it, but that's a pretty rare set. There's only.
What's the set?
I think there's like 10 of these graded. What's that?
What's the set name on it?
Oh boy, they call it 1952 WOS Bilderdienst Mulheim Ruhr.
I've never heard of that, so I wish I could.
These are album stickers. I mean, it's a card, but it does have a back, and they all do. But they were meant. I've seen the album before.
All right, so your thoughts on this, and I'll stop talking about the grading side of things after this. So companies have their own opinions on this, on like sticker cards like that. As soon as the back's peeled off, a lot of them won't grade the card anymore because they say it doesn't count as anything. I disagree with that sentiment. Like they still should be able to slab those and just give it as an authentic.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's
Well, and
my
I have an
opinion.
incentive to agree, right? For the same reason that you do with the Jackson 5 one. I have a Doors from that set, and that's the only example I've ever seen was a peeled one. If I could find one with the back, would I buy it? Absolutely. But
100%. Like you have to at that point. They're just so rare.
right.
Like
Especially sets like that 71 Bergman set is so
they're
obscure.
impossible.
Yeah, those are really, I mean, they're gonna be in an album in all probability if you find them. Um, for what it's worth, this is probably my favorite Walt card, and I greatly prefer. There's a lot of stuff from like the early movies that was made in the 40s and 50s that I'm not going to get to because of time. Maybe I'll show a couple examples quick, but I generally prefer to collect stuff from when Walt was alive. I don't draw an irrevocable line in the sand, but I greatly prefer Walt cards and actual movie cards that were made during his life. He died in December of 1966. So like the one of the last projects he was personally involved with was the first Winnie the Pooh short film that came out, I believe, in 65 or 66. Probably the last major classic movie he was deeply involved with was Mary Poppins. And then like Jungle Book is one of the bigger movies that came out shortly after he died. So that's kind of the breaking point. This particular card is from a really rare Heinerle German set from 59. I believe there are only 3 of these that have ever been graded by PSA. This is actually the lowest graded one, but I think it looks the best. I've seen the other 2. There's a 6 that looks way worse than this because of centering and surface issues. And then there's a 2.5 that looks about like this. This is a much better looking card to me than a 2, but PSA hates corners that aren't sharp. And I think that's basically what the PSA grade is how sharp are the corners. So,
Centering stuff is kind of interesting with them.
yeah, and I would much rather have a card like that centered with some rounded corners. Um, anyway, that and I also have here. I'll just show it now. Just a few weeks ago, I got this Mickey and Donald card from the same set. There are only 2 of those graded, counting this one. So those are very obscure, very odd with the
Yeah,
blue.
they're very tough with music stuff. There's a few that I'm still searching for on the music side that I haven't seen pop up in years.
Some of the Heinerle stuff is really hard. Okay, so this is another one of those cards that is pretty ubiquitous, especially now. Like in the run up to the 100th anniversary, a lot more of them started getting listed. So it's not rare, it's just rare in really high grade. This says 1938. This is a game set card from a company called Castle Brothers, who in England, who marketed a lot of entertainment property game cards starting in the late 30s and ran at least through the 70s. I'm not sure if they're still in operation in some form today. Their very first set of these very ornate illustrated game cards was Snow White in 1937. This label says 1938. I believe this set was actually issued in 1939. But so this came out 11 years after Mickey Mouse, you know, it's a in redbacks and bluebacks. This is one of 3 blueback 10s. There are 2 red 10s.
Dang.
So very hard card, but I actually have a version of that card that isn't graded that may actually be, rarer than all that. I don't know a lot about it, and I bought it from a very knowledgeable Disney collector who also doesn't know a lot about it. This looks exactly the same. The back is different, notably. It's the big bad wolf instead of Mickey himself on the back. It's the same image, but if you look at the name, it says Topolino, which is Mickey's name in Italian, which I believe roughly means baby mouse in Italian. So this is some Italian set. I have the Pluto too, that the guy threw in when I bought this, and I think he had the Snow White from the Italian set as well. Some of the names like Pluto is just called Pluto, so you wouldn't know unless you look at the image on the back. But this one, I mean, I don't know. Like I've been led to believe that the grading companies won't even grade it because they don't know if it's legit. I mean, it's certainly old. I just don't know when it came out and whether it was approved by Disney and or Castle Brothers.
But see, it's that old that I don't think the copyright should matter as much. But I mean, the easiest way would just be to look at how it's printed and the texture of the card. Like it's so easy to tell if a card's old or not. I mean, you could even smell it. I'm sure.
I've had raw cards from this set. This feels and looks and smells indistinguishable to me. Like I would say this was probably released at least by the early 40s would be my guess. But I don't know if it was a sub-licensed thing that was done with authorization or not.
And you'll never get that information now. I mean, we're so
probably not unless somebody in Italy happens to know. You also know that I bought these. I have the mini as well. These are 1935 Postum Company Post Toasties. So these were like cutouts from like some sort of cereal thing, I guess. I mean, I'm not from the UK, so I know Ian probably knows a lot more about them, but those are pretty damn cool. Don't see those a ton over here. I think you've seen some of those at the UK.
Yeah, I think I saw some over there, which I should have probably bought them, but that show was kind of like a culture shock thing for me.
You were overwhelmed.
It's so different. Like the closest thing that I've gone to seeing a show like that was the postcard show that I went to this last weekend, where it was just like boxes and boxes of raw cards, like kind of a good luck.
Yep, I get it. These are pretty sought after cards as well. I think these are 1935. No, they're 36, I think. They're from a game, an old made game. There are a number of different characters. The Donald's actually interesting. It's the early version of Donald with the really long beak. I don't have it, but I have the Mickey and the Minnie. I wanted to show too, like that Castle Brothers company. They did make non-Disney stuff. They made a lot of Disney stuff, and I have examples of quite a bit of it, at least the films that I like. But they also made some other notable sets in turn.
I was gonna say the Wizard of Oz. I was gonna say when you were saying that, like at least show a Wizard of Oz card. You have to have one.
Yeah, of those. That's the header card, and I'll talk about the header cards from those sets in a second. Here's another Oz card. I have actually quite a few from the Oz set. I don't want the whole set, just the ones that I like, but I think I have like 27 of the cards from the set, all graded. They're beautiful. But okay, so the deal with these header cards for those Castle Brothers sets, I didn't pull out one of the boxes. I think I have a box from the Winnie the Pooh set from the 60s. But the cards came all, together as you would expect, like a card game in a box, very much the size of the cards, just a little bit bigger. And then these header cards were glued to the cover of the box. So you'll see these Castle sets, and you can find high-grade examples of the cards inside, but it's very, very difficult to find these header cards graded above about a 3 or a 4. A 5 is not a bad grade for one of these because oftentimes they have glue damage on the back from when they were separated from the surface of the boxes. That one doesn't, so it got the higher grade. But a lot of the backs on those are trashed, as well as the edges, if not surface creases and stuff.
I have no idea on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I know guys today who get the Disney sets, like, still in the box, never really disturbed much, and they have this whole process for trying to pop off the header cards in a way that will allow them to grade high. I mean, it's almost like a chemistry experiment, I think, in some ways. I don't really understand it, but it rarely works out well. I'll say that from the times I've seen people try to do it. So just something to know, but a variety of cards from that. Like here's a Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. That's 19. Well, this says 52. I think it was actually 51. Here's a Tinkerbell I got for my daughter from the Peter Pan set. This says 53. I think it was actually 55, according to a guy that has like kind of the authoritative info online about Castle Brothers. Here's one from the Winnie the Pooh set in 65. I have that whole set, but not graded. That's the only one graded. This is one of my only exceptions, one of my handful of exceptions to the posthumous Walt cards. That's a pretty widely
Very nice one.
liked card, hard to get in high grade, but it's a Dutch gum card from either, I think, 73 or 4. I do want to just show real quick. I mean, I won't go through a lot of what I have. I'll show this off. I post this on Instagram. This is a postcard from France, circa 1940. I got the other day. I just loved it because Mickey was smoking. Just thought that was funny.
You know, when I went to the postcard show, there was a lot of Disney stuff, but like there wasn't anything like that. I only picked up one card, which I was going to throw on Comsy. I'll show it now because it kind of goes in that range of things, but nothing too crazy. I was kind of hoping that there was some like vintage on that side of things, but fortunately not. I think it might be in another stack. Hold on.
As you're pulling that up, I'll just flash this up too. This is again calling into question like what's a card and what isn't. These are graded; they're gradable. But this is from a Swedish magazine called like Aller's Family Journal or something like that. I think from 1937. It's basically got like the thickness and the feel of a magazine page, and that's what it was. But it does have a back. So it was made to be, cut out, and there are others in the set too. I think there's like a Charlie Chaplin, and there are some other Disney characters, but they were made to be cut out like cards, but they are cut out of a magazine.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like this right over here. I only picked up one for Comsy because I saw this one was selling a lot. So original like Walt Disney World. I would assume this is like 1970s, but one dealer had lots of that stuff.
There's a Walt postcard from around the time that Disneyland in California opened. I'm not sure this is actually from 1955, but I think it was probably created somewhere between 55 and 58.
Another postcard too, I assume.
Yeah, it is. It's very much like the one you showed.
Yeah, I see. If there was anything like that, I would have grabbed it and probably kept. But there was nothing like that.
There's a pretty cool one too that I want to buy. I just haven't yet, of him with like a huge like illustrated map of Disneyland from before.
I think I've seen that graded before.
Yeah, there's one on eBay right now, and actually that guy's a really legit seller. He's a very serious and knowledgeable Disney collector. I've gotten a number of things from him, including that Walt Donald Heinerle card. I do just want to show a couple more things. Let me pull them out of here, just because I want people to be aware of some of the cool stuff that's out there. There are, and again, this, it calls into question like what's a card and what are you going to consider a card and things like that. But I'm trying to find different examples. So there are these were album stickers. I mean, there were clearly albums created for them, but there's a series of cards of the old classic films or stickers from a Belgium company called De Boucalaire, and they actually have like some film star cards going back into the 30s. I believe this is from 38, maybe 39, but I'm pretty sure these were distributed with some like type of chocolate, because that is like a confectionery company, De Boucalaire. Maybe cookies, but probably chocolate. And these are pretty small. They're kind of the size of like a Dutch gum type card. Then there are some similar cards from Denmark, a couple different sets. This one's called Rich's Coffee. There are a bunch of different Disney movies that were issued in Denmark between probably like the late 40s, early 50s, and 1960. I think Sleeping Beauty was in 1960. This, I think, is from Denmark in probably the early 40s. I have a few of these Snow White cards. But what's interesting about this, they have nothing on the back, but they're embossed. And so that those images are raised on the surface. And then I don't know if you can see it, but you can see like the indentations on the back of where the surface is raised.
You see that happen a lot with early 1900s postcards that were issued from Germany. So like on the postcard side of things, this is something that I learned this weekend just talking to a few different dealers. a lot of the embossed postcards that you see in the U.S. were shipped overseas but printed for U.S. subjects. A really popular one would be George Washington's birthday. They may always, as funny as it is, make them overseas and then ship them over here and sell them at the different postcard shops, which postcard shops were kind of like the original card shops. I was learning from a lot of different dealers there that they had postcard shops at amusement parks. They had probably between 20 and 30 postcard shops in some of the bigger cities, and that they would have clubs where people would come together and trade postcards. I had no idea.
It's really big. I mean, that's a good hobby.
I had no idea like how large it was in the early 1900s until like talking to people. I also got a postcard book just to read about the subject matter to get a little more expertise, but I was surprised.
One of my favorite Cubs pieces is actually a vintage postcard. I wish I had it handy. I think it's in a safety deposit box, but it's from, it was interesting because it was originally created in 1906, and when they went to the World Series in 1906, and lost. They were in the World Series in 1906, 07, and 08. So it's a postcard of a Stife bear, which the Stife teddy bear had only been created.
Oh, I think I've seen that one before.
Right, and it's got like a baseball glove, it's got a banner that said originally 1906, but when the Cubs went back to the World Series in 1908, they crudely changed the 6 to an 8 and repurposed it. So I have the 1908 one. I have seen the 1906 original, but that's so cool because it's like a few years after Stife created the teddy bear in honor of Teddy Roosevelt. It's got that mashup crossover, but it's from 1908. I mean, it's really cool. And I've got a bunch of early postcards like that of Wrigley from when it was called Weedman Park. And that's the West Side grounds, right? That's their field before Wrigley.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
yeah, look at it. I think that one's from around somewhere between like 1909 and 1912, and Wrigley didn't open as Weedman Park until 1914.
What is it? 1916 stamp on it or postmark.
That's late, but there were
they could have bought it a long time ago. Because I love it. Like someone wrote a full detailed letter essentially on this one.
There are a number of different versions of all those cards, including the early ones of Wrigley. And I think I have one that's postmarked 1909 that has that basic image on it. But there are some really rare cards of Wrigley from when it was called Weedman Park, because it was originally created by the owner of the Chicago Federal League team the 2 years that the Federal League existed, and then he became the owner of the Cubs in 1916 and moved the Cubs into that stadium. And it was called Cubs Park. And then later, when William Wrigley bought the team, it was changed to Wrigley Field. But there are some postcards, and I have, I think, all of them. But there are some that actually have like Federal League Park. And then there's one that's really, really rare that still has like Federal League Park, but then it has like opening day 1916 now Cubs Park. It's really cool.
That's really cool on that side of things.
Okay, just a few more rapid fire things on these movie property stickers or cards, whatever you want to call them. This is a Rich's copy from the Peter Pan set, Tinkerbell. Maleficent is one of my favorite villain characters in all of cinema. Not higher than Darth Vader. These are Rich's copy, and I love all the Maleficent stuff in there. So that's 1960. The Peter Pan one, I think, is like 1955-ish. Then there's another set issued by a company called Fosca, F-O-S-K-A. They have Alice in Wonderland. They have Lady and the Tramp. There's some Mickey and Friends that I think is actually called like Donald Duck and Friends, and Dumbo and some things like that. So basically, any of the early classic films, there are probably cards or stickers of some type from Europe that relate to those films. I mean, there are ones for Pinocchio. I'm not even sure what this is. It's much smaller. I think this is from France. It's obviously from the back, some sort of chocolate maker. I'm not sure if that's like I think Alice in Wonderland came out in 51 or so. I'm not sure exactly how old this is, but I have a couple Alice in Wonderlands from that French series. And then here's the header card for the Alice in Wonderland Castle Brothers set. You can see it just has one big like tear above the
Yeah, you
rabbit's
can see it
head.
right there.
But
Almost
still
blends
a
in with the
beautiful-
design from like at least my angle.
What's that?
I said almost blends in with the design on my
You
angle.
know, the guy who gave it to me was the guy who sold me the Heinerle card. He said that he didn't even realize at first that it was damaged until he was just boxing it up. And he's like, oh, yeah, I thought that ball was like supposed to be there.
Yeah, at first I thought that, and then you said it was the glue. I'm like,
Yeah, so anyway.
The process.
But I mean, I have hundreds and thousands of cards like that probably. And I collect stuff, you know, even up through like the Pixar stuff. There's a bunch of really cool Pixar cards for most of those movies. I have like some Pirates of the Caribbean stuff, Jack Sparrow stuff that I really like that you don't see much of. Probably running out of time to show that stuff now, but that's at least a little taste of what's out there. I mean, literally. On the rookie thing, let's finish off with that full circle with Mickey. I just want to warn people. Many people online will sell these particular black and white Mickey cards that have a haunted house theme. And I believe they're from Spain, and PSA labels them as 1929. I don't believe those cards are probably from 1929. I think that cartoon that's based on actually came out in the United States in December of 1929 and did not reach Europe till a year or more later. I think it's more likely those cards are from 1930 or maybe even 1931, which again, I don't care what Mickey's first cards are, but if that's true, that black and white set is not from 1929, then it brings into play stuff like this. This is from France. It was distributed with chocolates. It's called Chocolaterie Rubis Verviers. I know my French is terrible. This could be from 1930. It could be from 1931. But these are very, very early. I don't know for certain, but I highly suspect this is the first card to ever show the character that would come to be called Pluto, although he's not called Pluto on that. It's just like Mickey washing his dog. But this is a very, very large set. They're very small cards. A lot of them are graded. You can find them in good grades. They're not obscenely expensive. I mean, nicely graded ones are a few $100s, but I think there's like 40 or 50 cards in this set. So definitely a set that a lot of hardcore Disney collectors prize, as is this one, which I don't like as much. I think this is American. I think it says like Philadelphia Gum Company.
Oh, that's a very popular set.
It is, and there are a couple of Walt cards in there, which I don't have because I don't like illustrated cards of people that much. But this is a set that a lot of hardcore Disney collectors will collect, both series of the entire set. This is from 1935, I believe. Yeah, and there's a Spanish version of this set too, that in Spanish language that is very rare.
And O-Pee-Chees on those, and there's high numbers that are very expensive. There's a lot I could talk about with that set. I actually seen some in auctions and know some hardcore collectors for that. But
then there's some stuff like this that like this is from I think 1936-ish from Italy. And then a very similar looking card that I think is from 37 from France. So there's a lot of European stuff from the 30s. Disney had a lot of good relations in Europe and licensed a lot of stuff to various companies and countries in Europe. This is pretty rare. This is that Mickey card from that set with that really rare German Walt card. But this one actually has glue damage on the back. But it's the only one I've ever seen.
You can't find it that much.
Right.
I know I do have to go in like a minute or so. So if anyone has any other questions, we can put it in the chat. But this was a great way to get back into the series. I didn't expect it to start with 2 hours. I know we're like, maybe we'll go to an hour to an hour and a half, but it's always so much fun. Like I learned a lot about the Disney side of things, which I had realistically, I had a little bit of background research from it, from being in Orlando and knowing a few other Disney collectors, but I definitely learned a lot from the different stuff that you showcased tonight.
Well, and I only have myself to blame that I couldn't show more Disney stuff, right? Because if I hadn't gone off on that Mickey Mantle, Luke Skywalker tirade, I probably could have got in another dozen Disney cards. But I think that was worth it. I'm going to stand by that.
People learn, though. I mean, the whole thing about the hobby is you got to, and it's more than a hobby itself, but you got to keep on expanding your horizons and continue to try to research or like improve your knowledge. Don't become stagnant and say, I'm only going to focus on like one specific narrow side of things, unless it's like a super rare set that like takes years to develop. I understand that, but the more education, the more of the different spaces that you can learn about stuff, the more opportunities to find cards to build a collection or connect different collectors and really build up a collection over time. That's my philosophy.
And you know what, at the end of the day, if you want to collect sports stuff that everybody covets because that makes you feel good, cool. It's your money, not mine, right? I mean, I'm just trying to show people out there, some stuff,
other stuff
that they may not know about, because I got bored with sports cards, and most people won't, but some people will. And so for those people or people that haven't dipped into non-sport that much, that's the purpose of showing some of this off, because most of us have never seen any of this stuff until we see it, right? And I didn't have any resources to just show me a bunch of this stuff, in mass.
It didn't exist back then. And like, I talked to Beckett before, and people just weren't interested in that stuff. They weren't interested in foreign issues. They weren't interested in non-sports. Like the sports card hobby was baseball cards. Like that's why basketball cards were so cheap for the longest amount of time. I mean, when I was a kid, LeBron rookies were dirt cheap. I mean, minus the RPAs and stuff like that. And look what the price they are now. People will say, oh, the basketball or hobby in general is crashing, and maybe it is over the last few years. But compared to where it was in the early 2000s, like there's a huge market for basketball collectors now than there was.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can remember in my little LCS in, small town Midwest, there was one dude who came in who opened basketball stuff. And I remember, spending hours there watching him open 86 Fleer and just, pulling so many Jordans. He even gave me a Jordan sticker one day. He wouldn't give me one of the cards, but I didn't really want them. I didn't buy any myself. I mean, I probably saw him open 8 full boxes at least over the course of the few months after that product came out. And I think he was the only guy buying it at the time. And those like tall boy cards and stuff, I mean, those were just like exotic oddities. Like nobody wanted to buy those.
No. And people still don't like larger cards. And that's a discussion for another day. But I do have to go to bed soon. So guys, make sure if you have an Instagram, make sure you follow Darth Brizzo on there. You'll see a lot of really, really cool cards that you won't see elsewhere. Yeah, and then just comment like, where the heck did you find this card at? Then you can start going into that deep dive research on some of those sets.
Well, thanks a lot, not for having me on, but for all you do. I mean, you are really one of the, I think, most interesting and trustworthy sources in this non-sport space. And there aren't many to begin with, and there aren't many that are like really interesting and trustworthy. So I do greatly appreciate all the time and the effort and the energy you put into this, and whatever success you have, you certainly deserve it.
Well, I appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit later on once I finish that app that I'm working on, because I think it will really help out the non-sport side of things, because it's been needed, but I'm going to talk about that another day.
Well, I'll go back in my hole now because nobody has me on their shows, which is fine. This is not something I love doing. You're basically the only guy. So maybe in another year you can.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I'll be like Puxatawny Phil of non-sport cards. You can pull me out once a year to show.
Once a year, there you go. I'd be like, in a January every year. All right, what did you pick up last year? But that's fine though.
That's perfect.
The knowledge that we both gained over this last year in the non-sports side of things, you look back and you're like, how did I not know that? But I think that's the best part about non-sports.
That's true. Every year,
it never gets boring.
It's exponential. It is never boring. It is sometimes frustrating. It is never boring.
Yeah. And we'll end it off on that. All right, guys, I appreciate it. And we'll be back not next week, but the week after. And we're going to do the 32 caramel president set, which most people don't know too much about, but you're going to learn a lot. All right. See you guys.
Happy collecting, everybody.
And